Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said, and Judas the traitor was standing there with him. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you, I am he," Jesus answered. "If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." The men seized Jesus and arrested him. When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?" But Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns." Then the detachment of soldiers with its commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. A young man, wearing nothing but a linen garment, was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Following Jesus' arrest, John records that Jesus is first taken before Annas, who had been high priest from AD 615, before being deposed by the Roman procurator Valerius Gratus. It appears that surprised that Jesus is brought before him for questioning, Jesus is sent next to Annas' son-in-law, Caiaphas, who has served as high priest since AD 18. Caiaphas presides over the Sanhedrin, also known as the Council, which is the Jewish Supreme Court, composed of 71 elders drawn from among the chief priests and scribes. Some of the members of the Sanhedrin apparently joined Caiaphas at his house in the late hours of the night in order to interrogate Jesus regarding his claims of messiahship. Then, as day breaks on Thursday morning, the entire council is called together in order to vote official condemnation. Laced throughout the record of Jesus' trial before the Jewish leaders is a moving account of Peter's personal struggle with loyalty to Jesus. In the garden, Peter had been characteristically impulsive in rushing to Jesus' defense. But now, as he comes to understand the seriousness of Jesus' arrest, Peter realizes his own potential jeopardy. When confronted with charges that he is one of Jesus' disciples, Peter weakens and denies any such association. On 3 separate occasions throughout this long night, and to a number of different accusers, Peter will make vehement and even profane denials in order to shield himself. His later feelings of remorse and his subsequent leadership in the establishment of the church will stand in clear contrast to Judas, who on this same day will be consumed by his guilt and take his own life. They bound him and brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it would be good if one man died for the people. Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" the girl at the door asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus replied. "I always taught in synagogues or at the temple, where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said." When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby struck him in the face. "Is this the way you answer the high priest?" he demanded. "If I said something wrong," Jesus replied, "testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me?" Then Annas sent him, still bound, to Caiaphas the high priest. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another girl saw him, and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath. "I don't know the man." A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death, but they didn't find any. Many testified falsely against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony before him. "We heard him say, 'I will destroy this man-made temple, and in 3 days will build another, not made by man.' Yet even then their testimony did not agree." Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, "Are you the Son, the Christ?" "I am," said Jesus, "and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, and coming on the clouds of heaven. The high priest tore his clothes. "Why do we need any more witnesses?" he asked. "You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" They all condemned him as worthy of death. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy! Who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. After a little while, about an hour later, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are the one of them, for your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. "Didn't I see you with him in the olive grove?" Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And Peter went outside and wept bitterly. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Christ," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I ask you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You are right in saying I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. The significance of what is about to happen can only be understood in the context of the political relationship between the Jews and their Roman rulers. The Jews have condemned Jesus to death on the basis of their own religious laws against blasphemy in response to Jesus' claim to be the Son of God. But the Sanhedrin has no power to execute condemned prisoners without approval of the Roman government. Yet, clearly, such a pagan government will not regard a charge of blasphemy with the same degree of seriousness as do the Jews. Therefore, more appropriate charges will have to be laid before the governor. Being politically astute, the Jewish leaders will accuse Jesus of sedition in allegedly refusing to pay taxes and in claiming to be the king of the Jews. The man to hear these charges is the Roman procurator and governor Pontius Pilate, who rules over Judea, Idumea, and Samaria. Pilate began his rule about the time John the Baptist began his ministry. Although his primary responsibility is that of financial administration and collection of taxes for the Roman Empire, Pilate is also burdened with the responsibility of approving and carrying out the execution of anyone sentenced to death by the people's own government, in this case, the Sanhedrin. Pilate has a reputation for unprincipled capriciousness, and the manner in which he handles Jesus' case gives no reason to doubt the truth of that reputation. Apparently convinced of Jesus' innocence, Pilate initially takes every available step to avoid personal responsibility. He sends Jesus to Herod Antipas, beheader of John the Baptist, but Herod wants no part of it either. Pilate then tries to release Jesus, but the mob insists that a notorious insurrectionist by the name of Barabbas be released instead. When even a scourging of Jesus fails to placate the crowd, Pilate finally washes his hands of the matter and orders that Jesus be put to death. Matthew's account begins the record of these tense hours as Jesus is first led to Pilate.